Black janitor fixed $500 million problem in seconds. What the billionaire did next stunned everyone. The trading floor of Apex Global Holdings went dark at 3:17 p.m. on a Tuesday in Manhattan. Every screen, thousands of them, flashed the same blood-red error code, SYSLOCK7. $500 million in live arbitrage positions froze mid-execution. Phones rang unanswered. A junior analyst vomited into a trash can. In the glass-walled executive suite 38 floors up, billionaire CEO Marcus Hale watched the catastrophe unfold on a wall of monitors and felt the familiar metallic taste of panic. He had built Apex from a dorm room spreadsheet into a $42 billion beast, but right now it was bleeding out in real time. The core routing engine, custom silicon, 9 years in development, had locked itself into an infinite checksum loop. The lead engineers were already on site, whiteboarding in frantic marker squeaks. Their estimate: 12 to 18 hours to spin up a cold backup cluster in Virginia. By then the loss would crest $500 million and the regulators would descend like locusts. Marcus pressed the intercom. "Get me everyone who breathes code. Triple overtime. I want this fixed yesterday." Down in sub-basement C, Earl Jenkins pushed his custodial cart past humming server racks the size of refrigerators. He had worked nights at Apex for 19 years, ever since the building was half-finished and the traders still wore suspenders unironically. Earl's badge read Facilities Level 1, but the photo was a decade old, his hair had gone iron gray and his knees clicked like loose change. He knew every pipe, every filter, every blind spot where the motion sensors lagged. He also knew the server room's ambient temperature had spiked 4 degrees in the last hour, an omen the engineers upstairs were too buried in logic to notice. Earl paused at rack 12B. A single status LED blinked amber in a sea of steady green. He had seen that pattern once before, back in '09 when a summer intern spilled Red Bull on a prototype board. The kid had been fired before lunch. Earl had stayed until dawn with a toothbrush and isopropyl, nursing the board back to life because nobody else would touch obsolete hardware. The memory tugged at him now. He keyed his master fob, borrowed from a sympathetic HVAC tech years ago, and slipped inside the cage. The air tasted of ozone and fear. On the central diagnostic panel, the same checksum error screamed in monospace. Earl's eyes flicked to the physical jumpers beneath the touchscreen. Someone had seeded the tertiary failover bridge backward during last month's hot swap. A 5-second fix if you knew the board's dirty little secret. The silk screen labels were mirrored for manufacturing reasons nobody had bothered to correct in revision 2.1. Earl hesitated. Protocol said only Tier-3 engineers could touch live silicon. Protocol also said a man with a 7th grade education and a spotless 19-year record should keep pushing his cart. But the room was growing hotter, and somewhere upstairs a kid who looked like his grandson was probably losing his first real job. He reached in, flipped the jumper with a thumbnail, and pressed the recessed reset pin with the eraser end of a pencil. The fans spooled down, then up again. The amber LED winked green. Total elapsed time: 7 seconds. Earl closed the cage, wiped the panel with the cuff of his sleeve, and rolled his cart toward the freight elevator. He never saw the overhead camera's timestamp or the alert that fired to the executive dashboard. SYS Lock 7 cleared. Source: Sub-basement C. Marcus Hale saw it. The trading floor erupted in cheers so loud the glass vibrated. Positions unwound. Profits flipped from red to black, and the hemorrhage stopped at $4.2 million, pocket change. Marcus strode to the railing overlooking the pit, tie askew, and raised both fists like a prizefighter. Then his CIO whispered the impossible. The fix originated from a custodial RFID badge. Earl Jenkins, night shift, janitor. Marcus demanded the raw logs. He watched the 7-second clip on loop, zoomed until the pixels blurred. A black man in navy coveralls, moving with the unhurried certainty of someone who had fixed more than machines in his life. Marcus felt something he hadn't in years: small. "Find him," he told security. "Bring him up." Quietly, Earl was mopping the executive washroom when 2 suited guards appeared. He assumed the worst. Someone had noticed the master key. Instead they escorted him to the private elevator, the one with the mahogany paneling that smelled of lemon oil he himself applied every Thursday. The ride to 38 felt longer than his commute from the Bronx. Marcus waited alone in the conference room, sleeves rolled, no entourage. The door opened and Earl stepped in, cap in hand, eyes taking in the view of Central Park without lingering. "Mr. Jenkins," Marcus began, then stopped. The rehearsed speech, gratitude, bonus, photo op, felt suddenly obscene. "You saved us," Earl shrugged. "Board was mislabeled. Happens." Marcus circled the table. "That board was supposed to be foolproof. 9 PhDs couldn't crack it in 4 hours. You did it in 7 seconds with a pencil." "Eraser ends non-conductive," Earl said, as if explaining the weather. Silence pooled between them. Marcus studied the man. The faint scar through one eyebrow, the wedding ring polished thin, the way he stood at ease yet ready to leave. Marcus had grown up in Greenwich with trust funds and tutors. Earl's file, pulled in 60 seconds, showed a Bronx address, a daughter in nursing school, a wife gone 6 years to cancer, and 19 consecutive performance reviews that read, "Exceeds expectations," in the same bland HR font. Marcus made a decision that surprised even him. "I'm not offering you a bonus," he said. "Money's easy. I'm offering you the problem." Earl's brow lifted a fraction. "That routing engine, it's a monster. We keep patching it because scrapping it would tank the stock. You just proved the monster has a bad tooth. I want you to pull it." Marcus tapped the table. "Full access. Whatever team you need. When it's done, you own the new architecture. Title, equity, the works." Earl looked out the window where dusk painted the skyline bronze. "I push a cart, Mr. Hale." "Not anymore." The twist came 3 weeks later. Earl assembled a crew of 3. A deaf lip-reading intern from Lagos who could debug assembly faster than compilers, a former subway electrician with a photographic memory for schematics, and a night school dropout who'd taught herself quantum error correction on library Wi-Fi. They worked in the sub-basement, away from the glass towers and ego. Marcus stayed hands-off, wiring whatever they asked. Liquid nitrogen, vintage oscilloscopes, once a crate of grapefruit because the intern swore the acidity sharpened focus. On day 21, Earl presented the board. Same footprint, 1/10 the power, 0 checksum failures in stress tests that simulated the apocalypse. The catch? It required a manual calibration step every quarter, performed by a human hand. No automation could replicate the tactile feedback of a jumper seated just so. In other words, the $500 million engine now depended on the janitor's fingertip. Marcus stared at the prototype, then at Earl. "You built in obsolescence, for us." "Built in humanity," Earl corrected. "Machines forget. People remember." The launch demo was scheduled for the annual shareholder gala aboard a yacht in the Hudson. Analysts predicted a 3% stock pop. Marcus had other plans. That night, under strings of Edison bulbs and a string quartet sawing Vivaldi, Marcus took the microphone. Flashbulbs popped. He thanked the engineers, the coders, the quants. Then he gestured to the wings. "Ladies and gentlemen, the architect of Apex's future." Earl walked out in a tailored navy suit that fit like it had waited 19 years. Gasps rippled. Some recognized the janitor who'd once refilled their soap dispensers. Marcus handed him the mic. Earl cleared his throat. "My mama taught me a floor ain't clean till the corners shine. Same goes for code. Y'all been polishing the middle and ignoring the edges. That's where the dirt hides." He held up the new board. "This here don't just root trades. It roots trust. Every quarter, somebody's gotta touch it, feel it, own it. That somebody ain't gonna be a machine. It's gonna be one of us." The room was silent enough to hear ice melt in champagne flutes. Marcus stepped forward. "Effective tonight, Earl Jenkins as Chief Reliability Officer. 20% equity. Veto power on any system that can't pass the human test." He turned to Earl. "And the sub-basement is now the Integrity Lab. Your team runs it. No glass walls." A beat. Then applause thundered, uncertain at first, then genuine. Phones rose to capture the moment. Hashtags were born. But the real climax came later, after the yacht docked and the guests spilled into waiting town cars. Marcus found Earl on the pier, tie loosened, staring at the water. "You didn't have to give me 20%, Earl said quietly. "Yes, I did," Marcus replied. "Because tomorrow the headlines will forget your name. They'll say Apex innovated its way out of crisis. I needed the world to see who really held the pencil. Earl smiled, the first full one Marcus had seen. My daughter's tuition just got interesting. They stood in silence as Manhattan's lights flickered on, a constellation of second chances. Somewhere in the Bronx, a nursing student refreshed her portal and saw a balance of 0. In Lagos, a deaf coder booked a flight home to hug her mother. In a subway tunnel, an electrician bought his first legal beer in years. And in the Integrity Lab, a single amber LED blinked, waiting for a human hand to turn it green. The next morning, Apex stock opened up 11%. The analysts called it genius risk management. Only a few noticed the new footnote in the 10Q. Critical systems require quarterly tactile verification per Jenkins protocol. Earl kept one thing from his old life, the custodial cart. He parked it outside the lab, polished daily, a reminder that every empire rests on the corners someone once thought too small to clean. Years later, when school groups toured the building, the guides no longer pointed to the executive suite. They stopped at sub-basement C, where a bronze plaque read, "Trust is not engineered, it is touched. E. Jenkins, Crow." And if you looked closely, you could still see the faint outline of an eraser smudge on the very first board, the one that saved $500 million in 7 seconds, and a company's soul in the years that followed.